The deadliest mass shooting at a high school in U.S. history occurred on Valentine's Day in 2018. It is commonly known as the Parkland High School shooting. On that day, a 19-year-old murderer opened fire on students and staff at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, killing 17 people and injuring 17 others. The killer used an AR-15 semi-automatic, which he assembled in the school stairwell adjacent to the first-floor classrooms. He fired the AR-15, which had an engraved swastika, 139 times.
17 people should have not had to die, and another 17 injured for people to take this seriously and prioritize this issue.
It is worth noting several law enforcement failures occurred surrounding this horrific event. Max Schachter, the father of one of the victims, Alex Schachter, joins me on this episode of Some Future Day.
This is my life, and my mission is to keep my little boy's memory alive and do everything I can to make schools safer.
Since the mass shooting, Mr. Schachter has elevated to become the preeminent mind surrounding school safety. But he is way more than simply a national school safety advocate. Max Schachter is a brave, fearless, and tireless soul who will never stop fighting for his son Alex and all the other victims and families of school shootings. Max, welcome to Some Future Day. It's really an honor. I appreciate your time and your story and your message. How are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. Yesterday, I got a call from a legislator in Virginia who was trying to pass a school safety bill, and he said, "I need you. We're up in 5 minutes." And so I jumped on a Zoom and testified in the Virginia legislature about this school safety bill, and it passed out of committee. And then I just got a text saying it's going in front of the Appropriations Committee, and I need you again, Max. So this is my life, and my mission is to keep my little boy's memory alive and do everything I can to make schools safer.
So I want to get into the role that you're playing with the public sector, but since you raised Alex, I'd prefer to start with him. I think it's important to talk about Alex a little bit, given the fact that this entire episode and a lot of your work, all of your work really now, is because of Alex, because he was murdered. But it gets lost a little bit in the commentary when you hear about the Parkland shootings and, the victims, they lose their person at a massive scale. I know that doesn't apply to you and your family and friends and loved ones, but I'd like to just back up a little bit and hear about, in your words, like, who was Alex?
Thank you, Mark. That's the most important thing to me in my life is my little boy and remembering all the wonderful times that we had together. Alex, in any picture you look at, he's always smiling and he's got these cute little dimples. But Alex had a lot of tragedy in his life. When Alex was just 4, his mother, my wife, Debbie, passed away in her sleep, and I thought that was the worst time of my life. I was a single, now a widower, and had 2 little boys I had to raise on my own, all by myself. And then several years later, I met this wonderful woman whose husband died of a heart attack. She lived in Port Washington, New York, and she had 2 little girls named Morgan and Avery. And friends of friends knew both of our stories, and we obviously had this shared grief. And so I met, just to try to help her, and fell in love with her. And then we had to make a decision. Do we take the girls and move to Florida, or do I take the boys and move to New York? And I knew I couldn't handle the cold weather. So we thought we'd have a good life in Florida. We thought that the schools were safer in Parkland. That's why I moved to Parkland. And then 10 years later, I sent Alex to high school, and he's murdered in the deadliest high school shooting in U.S. history. So,
So, I know it sounds from, just doing a little research on my side, it sounds like he had a very eclectic range of interests. I noticed from just your website that he was a big sports fan, big New England in
yeah,
particular, a
yeah,
sports fan, which as a New Yorker, of course, I would not tolerate that if I was lucky enough to meet Alex. Um, but other things too, I really caught my attention the fact that he was a musician, and I think that you had mentioned that his grandfather also played the trombone.
yeah.
What was he like just as a regular kid? Like what was his personality like?
Yeah, he was just a sweetheart. Even as a teenager, he was just a lover, and he used to give me the best hugs, um but he was a great athlete as well. Alex played in multiple Parkland rec basketball championships that he won. And as you mentioned, Alex's grandfather played the trombone, and then when it came time to, I said, Alex, you got to do something. You got to do band or you got to do sports. And then he said, okay, I'll take band. And in middle school, he gravitated and he tried out and he did the best on the trombone, just like his grandfather did. And so in middle school, he doubled up. He took two different instrument classes, and then in preparation for high school, he knew that he wanted to be in the marching band. And Marjory Stoneman Douglas had a good marching band, but it wasn't great. And then when he went to high school, his freshman year, just 2 months before the shooting, they won the state title, and
Wow.
Alex was there. That was one of my happiest memories, is being on the field when they won the state title. So, and then Alex loved Nutella crepes. He loved. I mean, he's my kid. I was born in the '70s, and so he loved the band Chicago. His favorite song was 25 or 6 to 4. So
Oh, oh boy. That's amazing. And you're saying he was a real lover, huh? He was a compassionate, kind human.
he was a sweetheart, my little sweet
Yeah.
boy.
What do you think he would have turned out to be like if he was, if he had the chance to live? What do you think his life would have been like?
It's so hard. I have three others now, and they make different moves and different changes. Maybe business. I had a small insurance company beforehand, and so, or maybe a lawyer. So
Yeah. And his siblings, it's an interesting situation. I'm sure you have been compared to the Brady Bunch. I'm showing my age a little bit, but his older brother, Ryan, I've heard a lot of kind things. You and I met, full disclosure, we met through a mutual colleague, and he's told me a lot about what an exceptional person Ryan is, Alex's older brother.
yeah, he loved his older brother. They used to always play basketball in the driveway, and Alex's older sister, he bonded with her over anime, and Alex's little sister, he adored as well. She would always want to comb his hair just to be next to him, and um, I know they miss him a lot, and his mother as well.
So I know when we opened the conversation, you mentioned how Virginia is top of mind right now, and through the years, all of a sudden, you've built this mission up with a significant role within the public sector, working with presidents, working with senators, congress people, and beyond. Really impressive. But I'm curious, like, have you seen any innovation in the private sector, for example, technology that can improve school safety? Do you think that uh, there's something out there that you would like to talk to today that isn't getting enough attention yet in the private sector as it relates to maybe there's a new technology or something with funding that would really help um, preserve the concept of school safety on a national level here in America?
I can't put my finger on one specific technology, because when you talk about school safety, it's a multidisciplinary approach. And so there's so many different people and stakeholders that are involved. Like the school district can't do it on their own. Law enforcement can't fix the issue. it really needs to be a collaboration because a lot of these individuals who go on to be school shooters, they all exhibit concerning behavior ahead of time. And so the best tool we have is threat assessments and threat management. All these individuals, they don't just snap overnight. They all exhibit leakage and concerning behavior over time. And it's a people issue. It's a training issue. It's making sure that people are vigilant and not complacent and prioritize this issue above all else, because the most important thing is that the kids and the staff make it home to their families every day. If they don't, nothing else matters. So I wouldn't say that it's a technology thing. It's a people thing. It's a mindset. It's a culture issue. And prior to Parkland, we knew, or we found out afterwards, that there was a negative culture on this campus. And the principal of Marjory Stoneman Douglas didn't take safety and security seriously. When we interviewed him and we asked him if there was a threat to shoot up your school, did you expect to know about it? He said, no, not really. That wasn't my job. My assistant principal was in charge of safety. And that's a crazy thing to say. It's the leadership on campus and the leaders of Florida that have made this huge shift after Parkland to prioritize this issue above all else.
Yeah, but it seems like looking at the facts surrounding Alex's murder, it seems like obviously it takes a village, right? Starting at the home with the parents, but all the way through. But what I understand is that Alex's murderer exhibited violent acts starting as young as 3 years old. He went through years of therapy, medicine, and then eventually his own mother purchased a gun for him at 18 years old. So, and I know there's other facts too as you expand beyond. So there was social media postings. There were complaints about his propensity to act in a violent way that I believe the FBI actually received. So at what level does society need to see that the writing is on the wall and they need to act? Like, how could you take this person who from 3 years old has a history of being violent and just ignore it all?
Yeah.
If it's a people issue, then we really have a bigger issue than just the obvious, right?
There was a culture of leniency in Broward County Public Schools where they prioritized the rights of the Parkland murderer over the rights of all the other kids in his classes. And there was no consequences. And so we're all in favor of giving kids a second chance, but not 55 of them. He accumulated over 55 different disciplinary incidents in just middle school alone. And so at some point, we need to introduce consequences for individuals so that we can get them off their pathway to violence, and people need to act. There were all of these tips like you talked about, and nobody did anything, and that's what's so upsetting.
So is it the government policy that sets the standard for school safety and then everybody comes around? No, it's not.
No, it's unfortunately, and I believe it should be. I believe that there should be safety standards that every school has to meet. But unfortunately, up to this point, the feds have just deferred to the school districts and said it's your job and you figure it out. But at some point, if the schools are going to fail to protect our kids, I think the federal government should and has an obligation to step in.
So you must have changed your perspective regarding school safety in several ways since the incident, since your son was murdered. What are some ideas that maybe you held prior to the death of Alex that have changed significantly surrounding school safety?
I mean, prior, this really wasn't on my radar. I wasn't really impacted by gun violence, and I wasn't a victim of it. And I thought that Alex, went to school in a safe environment. I didn't realize that he went to school with a violent individual. And that's the reason why that's why my wife and I created our charity called Safe Schools for Alex, where our most important initiative right now is creating school safety dashboards. So after the shooting, I found out that every school in the state of Florida was required to report incidents of violence and drugs to the State Department of Education. And I have three other children, and I wanted to make sure that nothing happened to them. And so after the shooting, I went to go look up their schools to see what was happening in their schools. Because I never got the call from their principal saying, "Great news, parents. This year, I just wanted to let you know this quarter, our bullying numbers dropped by 20%, or our fighting numbers, or the amount of weapons that are coming into the school." I never got that call, Mark, because that call doesn't exist, because this data was basically in the Department of Education, buried in deep in the website. And that information was not transparent and not out for parents to really see. And so that's why we created this school safety dashboard, because every parent has a right and they want to know what's happening after they drop their kids off at school. And transparency is good. And if you can't manage what you don't measure. And so that's why we've created 11 school safety dashboards across the country. Our goal is to do it all over the country and every state, because this is what makes schools safer. You have to know what's happening inside the school. And it helps schools, it helps law enforcement, it helps legislators, so that they know what's happening in the schools and they can surge resources to schools that need it most and help kids that need it most.
So the dashboard is accessible to everyone. You don't have to pay a fee. If I'm moving to Florida from New York City, I could look up a school in a particular county that I want to attend, and I have access to all of this data, and it would help me decide whether or not I feel like I'm sending my children to a wholesome and safe environment, a safe place every single day.
Yeah, it's free to everyone, and I encourage everyone, please check it out. It's schoolsafetydashboard.org. We're in 11 states right now. Our goal is the entire country. So any support your listeners can give us would be greatly appreciated.
Max, do you think that the concept of school safety in America is viable? I know, like last night when you and I were talking, you were like, "Oh, we just had some more school shootings, and they're top of mind." Is it really a viable idea here in America that we won't see these school shootings?
You know, that's like, I think you could probably akin that question to, can we stop mass shootings? Can we stop violence in America? The answer, as you probably agree with me, is probably no. But we can limit them. We can mitigate the number of injuries and fatalities when they happen by implementing the best practices that Florida has implemented already. So the number one best practice that Florida has really strived to excel in is threat management and threat assessments. We have a threat assessment team in every school and every district. We have a See Something, Say Something app. That's what I was just testifying in Virginia on a school safety bill there. All these kids that are in school, they know who's thinking of, who's struggling, who's depressed, who's being bullied, who's thinking about hurting themselves or potentially hurting others. They know, so they've got to have a means to communicate that with the school and law enforcement. So every school, every state needs a See Something, Say Something app. Every
Great tool.
school needs a panic button, uh, so that when an emergency happens, uh, we know where it's happening, and we want to make sure that law enforcement knows, and the cavalry can come. Because if you're with a school district that doesn't have an armed individual, and there's someone on campus intent on killing your son or daughter, you basically have to wait until an armed individual shows up. And the most important thing is to stop the killing so that you can stop the dying. So in answer to your question, are we going to stop violence in America? Are we going to stop mass shootings? The answer is no, but there are definitely things that we can do that we know will prevent acts of targeted violence. We prevent mass shootings every day with the FBI tip line and see something, say something apps. Um, and we've seen in several of the latest shootings, the one in Uvalde, where the individual walked through an unlocked door to get into the school and then walked into the unlocked classroom. So it's about being vigilant. It's about prioritizing this issue above all else. Uh, and it's about leadership. Um, and so, we've done a lot in Florida to make sure that the data's correct, make sure that the schools are reporting accurately, but all that stems from the prioritization of this issue of school safety. Kids and parents, they want a kid to send their kid to school and make sure they come home every day.
It's funny because a lot of what you're talking about is common sense. It seems that emerging technology or simple technologies can help solve a lot of the problems. You've told me now a few times that Florida really is ahead of the curve nationwide. Which other states are close, and what are the roadblocks to implementing these common sense initiatives to preserve school safety?
Well, obviously, funding is a big issue. And Texas is making strides. Virginia is one of the leaders in this space, and Utah is coming along. They just passed a massive school safety bill. Colorado has had a lot of terrible mass shootings, and so Colorado has a great school safety center there. So there are other states, but it's kind of all over the board. There are states. What makes Florida different is that we've passed 7 school safety bills after Parkland, and it's all in law. And so these aren't suggestions that at other states are just, we're suggesting you do this or we're recommending this. We learned in Florida that it's not good enough just to have policies and procedures. You've got to have accountability in place to make sure that these school districts and school officials are implementing best practices and doing the right thing. So it's policies and procedures, and it's accountability to make sure it gets done. In Florida, the Commissioner of Education has the authority to withhold the superintendent's salary if we find out that school districts are not reporting accurately and not abiding by the law.
That's phenomenal. So when you talk about funding, is that a both federal and state level issue, or where does the funding come from?
Yeah, so in Florida, again, we prioritize this issue. Governor DeSantis has allocated over $1 billion to school safety since Parkland, $200 million a year in school safety, and then there's hundreds of millions in mental health funding. So he's prioritized this issue, but there's lots of things that are no cost, low cost. So, for instance, in Parkland, nobody died on the second floor because some of the teachers covered the windows with a piece of construction paper. And so the murderer was in the hallway looking into the classroom. He didn't think anybody was there. So there's things that can be done that are just low cost, no cost. Just locking the door, locking the gate. So the Parkland murderer walked through an unlocked, unstaffed gate. That doesn't happen anymore. So it's doing the little things. It's having the culture on campus that this is important. And there is some technology that's important. We've got panic buttons. There is gunshot detection technology out there. They're using AI with cameras so that if you're able to look at cameras, and if there's cameras now can detect movement, they can detect lots of still bodies. People are in the stairwells when they shouldn't be, and they can detect fights. So there's a lot of technology that has to be interplayed into making schools safer, but there's not just one panacea. It's a holistic approach with a lot of different stakeholders involved, and the culture and leadership to make sure that everyone understands that this is the most important thing on campus.
Yeah, it's, you keep talking about culture and leadership, or at least you're implying that. And it seems like in this particular incident, the culture and the leadership was really just devoid, like just a total, I don't even think it was a breakdown. I think it was worse. Like you had told me about, and everybody knows about the deputy at the school who was armed. And rather than going in and running and using his weapon to support and hopefully save certain individuals from the murderer. He actually, you called him the coward of Broward. He hid while everything unfolded. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me so angry when I watch the video of him going to the front of the building. He was 7 feet away from the entrance to the 1200 building, which is the building that was attacked that day. And if he would have just gone and looked in the window, he would have seen carnage and dead bodies on the floor in the hallway. He didn't. He got scared and went and hid between concrete buildings 7 and 8 for the next 48 minutes. Even after other officers ran in after 11 minutes, he still remained in his same spot. And that goes back to training. So on so many different levels, training, there was a failure. So Broward Sheriff's Office was not properly trained to identify the social media threats. The teachers did not receive proper active shooter training, and the kids didn't know what to do during when the shooting was happening. And then the officer, the coward school resource deputy, he only received active shooter training every 3 years for just 4 hours, and that's not enough. For us to train our minds and have our bodies react to stressful situations, we've got to do things over and over again in practice. And prior to Parkland, they put deputies in schools that were kind of at the end of their career, were only several years away from retirement, and now they don't do that anymore. Now we understand how important this issue is, but it shouldn't have taken Parkland. 17 people should have not had to die, and another 17 injured for people to take this seriously and prioritize this issue. And so that's why I travel around the country and I present on Parkland on school safety, so that hopefully people are going to be proactive in other communities and not reactive.
The deputy's name, I believe, is Scott Peterson, who failed to act. Correct.
Yes.
And then there was another, I guess, controversial situation as it relates to law enforcement at Parkland, or law enforcement failures specifically. Didn't the police that arrived on the scene um, fail to enter the school immediately? What happened there? Is that a training issue also? Can
Yeah,
you explain that?
yeah, totally. So there were two responding law enforcement agencies. The incident commanders were from the Broward Sheriff's Office. The deputy was from the Broward Sheriff's Office, and all of the initial first responders were from the Broward Sheriff's Office. They only had limited training in active shooter, and it wasn't enough. And so they didn't immediately go in the building. Neither did the school resource deputy. And when the other deputies arrived, the school resource deputy, who was the incident commander at the time, he told them stay 500 feet away, don't come close. And that he not only failed his job, but he impeded the response, telling other officers to stage 500 feet away, not come into the building. And so the other law enforcement agency that responded, the Coral Springs Police Department, they responded like heroes. Those officers ran right into the building. But again,
It was way too late at that point.
yeah, no, you're right. But the difference is the training. Coral Springs Police Department receives active shooter training every year. And
I see.
so they responded like they should have. They went right in the building. Those guys are heroes.
So you talk about accountability. How did the police officers, like, how were they accountable? The ones who were delayed, not the Coral Springs group. How were they accountable as it relates to this mass murder?
So the Parkland families fought and worked with the governor, Governor DeSantis, to remove the former sheriff who was responsible for training his deputies. So the former Broward Sheriff Scott Israel, he was removed from office, number one. And then a lot of those some of those officers retired. And then the deputy that went and hid, the coward of Broward, he was indicted. He was the first school resource deputy ever to be indicted on child neglect charges. And so he was indicted on 7 charges, but unfortunately he was acquitted. And so right now, nothing happened to him, and he collects a huge pension every month.
He's collecting a pension.
Yeah.
Wow. That's remarkable. And the FBI, was the FBI accountable on
Yeah,
any level?
yeah, absolutely. We filed a lawsuit against them, and they made wholesale changes after the director of the FBI, Chris Wray, came to Parkland. They were the first ones to come out after Parkland. The deputy director testified in Congress, and they admitted that they dropped the ball and they failed. And then after the director Chris Wray came to Parkland and walked through the site of the Parkland school shooting before it was demolished, I was invited along with my friend Fred Guttenberg, who lost his daughter Jamie, went to Clarksburg, West Virginia to see for ourselves with our own eyes what the FBI had done and changed since Parkland. I knew that they had made institutional change, and I knew they had done a lot, but I wanted to see for myself. And what I saw in Clarksburg, West Virginia, was that they no longer have, don't take this seriously. And they made a lot of changes. They created the National Threat Operations Center. They have highly experienced individuals now. They've got former hostage negotiators. They've got former chief of police working up in the National Threat Operations Center. And so they are the ones that actually help the United States prevent a lot of mass shootings. That's the FBI tip line. And
Well,
so they receive over 5,000 tips a day. And Mark, you know what? The number one tip that the FBI receives every day
tell me.
is school shooting threats. And so they take it very, very seriously now, and they've stopped a lot of tragedies. So they're doing a great job.
So that's, at a very high level, national level, government. But let's bring it back down to the parents. I mean, there are so many parents like you and me who are really concerned about our children's safety. What message would you give a parent who is concerned about the safety of their children as it relates to something that they can do proactively, immediately, today, constructively, to mitigate perhaps violence at the school level?
And Mark, you're so right on the money, and that is, I get emails constantly from parents saying, Max, my kid's being bullied, what can I do to help? Max, my school doesn't have a school resource officer on campus. There's no armed individual on campus. What do I do, Max? And I forgot to mention, the number one best thing that Florida has done is that in every K through 12 school across the entire state, we have an armed individual, a minimum of at least one. And some have more than that, because 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2. And we have armed guardians as well, Mark, and they're force multipliers. So was one of the first changes, and one of the huge changes that Florida implemented. But in regards to what parents can do, I recommend that they go to safeschoolsforalex.org. We have 10 best practices on school safety. I recommend they check out our website, check out our school safety dashboard. If you're one of the states, one of the 11 where we have dashboards, check out our school safety dashboard. First, they need to be educated about what the best practices are for school safety. And then number 2, they need to have a conversation with administration and let them know how important this issue is to them. Talk to the mayor, talk to their state representative, talk to their congressman, get involved. Let these people know that school safety is the most important thing on their mind, and they want to make sure that their school is safe. They want to make sure that their school is implementing the best practices.
Max, how does it impact you? Like when you hear, we keep going back to these recent school shootings. like on a personal level, I understand that you're very motivated, action oriented, but what happens to you? Like, do you relive this horrific experience every single time? Like, what goes on in your mind when you hear about these current, like the newer school shootings?
It's horrible. It's horrible. Every one of us that are impacted by these horrible tragedies, when the next one happens, it's really painful, and it hurts us. I feel so bad for those families because I know what I went through. So we just had a school shooting in Nashville. Prior to that, we just had a school shooting in Madison, Wisconsin. And
Yeah.
so I'm reaching out to Madison. I'm close with their director of school safety, Trish Kilpin. She's doing a great job helping that community after their shooting. And what goes through my head is I know that if there's a lot of injured and a lot of victims, I remember what happened to us. They had all of us meeting at the Marriott. I got to the Marriott after I had been at the hospital for hours trying to find Alex. Then I went to the Marriott. I got there at 5 o'clock. This is Valentine's Day of 2018. So we're coming up on 7 years. And I got there at 5 o'clock and I just wanted to know where Alex was. I just wanted to know if I was going to ever see my little boy again. And they didn't tell me until 2 o'clock that morning. So they made me wait all those hours. And that's horrific. So that's why I present to a lot of law enforcement agencies to talk about what happened to us, so it never happens and to another family. And so, my heart, I feel so bad for the families that are going through this now because I know that they have a hole in their life that will never be filled. And I hope that the murderers are not here anymore after these shootings happen. So like what goes through my head is, okay, is the shooter alive or is he dead? And if he's dead, I'm happy because that means that the families don't have to go through and suffer through a trial, because we went through the trial of the Parkland murder, and that was horrible.
Well, I listened to your the statement you gave, your speech really
Thank you.
at the sentencing, and what occurred to me is that you are an incredibly brave, even-keeled, action-oriented person as it looks to as you seek on finding a solution for violence in schools, for school safety. You're not focused on the Second Amendment. You're not focused on curtailing guns. You're looking at issues of what measures can people take to create a safe school environment? What measures can people take to perhaps work with those who are mentally ill to find solutions? Like, you're very action oriented, but your words when you spoke in that courtroom just like really just nailed me like right to my soul. You said, "You know what? You know what my wish will be? That you suffer." You said this to your son's killer. You said, "You know what my wish will be? That you suffer a painful, violent death." And it just like, it gave me chills. And I understand. I know that's not who you are and getting to know you. And on the flip side, I fully believe that you want that and that he should have got that. Why, if Florida has a death penalty, why was this killer, this like mass killer, why was his life saved?
Yeah. I still don't know the answer to that question, but in Florida, it had to be unanimous. And so there was one individual, she was a hard no. She voted for life, and then two others went along with her. So the Parkland mass murderer got life in prison, and um, but after that injustice was served on the families. We worked hard to make sure that never happened to another family, and in coordination with the governor, we got that law changed, and so now it's not unanimous. Now it's a supermajority.
It seems like the government, in some ways, as it related to that, the sentencing hearing, were unfair to the families of the victims. I believe that they put certain restrictions, in fact, on your statement. What was that all about? I
Yeah,
was
that's
shocked to hear that, actually. It just seems so irrelevant. Like, at that point, there's It just seems very unfair to restrict you. Like there was no relevant legal issue that I saw as to why they would limit your statements in any way.
Yeah, so it's the Florida Supreme Court that limits a victim impact statement. I couldn't talk about the punishment I wanted the murderer to receive. I couldn't talk about the crime that he had committed. I could only talk about the impact that it had on Alex and what a wonderful little boy he was. So that was hard. But the justice system, it's really unfair. It favors the criminals, and uh, the Parkland murderer had all these high powered attorneys, these death penalty advocates, and he had a lot of attorneys, and it was just disgusting how they behaved. The defense attorneys, they they lowered his chair. They put him in a sweater vest. They put crayons in his hand. He was 19 years old, and they made him look like a child. So to try to trick the jurors
Jury.
into giving him life, the way they touched him and the way they caressed him and put their arm around him, it was gross and disgusting. And but then in the impact statement that I was able to give afterwards, I was able to tell them, the way I really felt. But during the trial, the prosecution said you have to be careful. I couldn't wear a Safe Schools for Alex shirt. I couldn't wear a Safe Schools for Alex bracelet. They told me to, even during trial, like, they don't even cry because the defense would try to get a mistrial, and they were right. We didn't just have one medical examiner; we had seven because there were 17 victims in Parkland, and
Disgrace.
and it was really hard to listen to all of that because there was stuff that I had shielded my brain because it was too painful, and I broke down in court listening to Alex as medical examiner, and the next thing I knew, the defense was trying to get a mistrial. It was just
Who led the defense? What was the lead defense attorney's name?
I try to I don't know.
Yeah.
It was McNeil.
They were all just trying to monetize the killing,
They're
really.
just trying to get off, get him off of, prevent him from getting the death penalty in Florida. In her closing argument, she said that you don't even have to look at the facts. You just have to vote based on your conscience. And I'm like, how
What?
can you not look at the facts?
Right.
And you'll never forgive yourself. And painting this story like he had all this brain damage, which wasn't true. And it was just disgusting. So uh, he's serving life, and I hope he gets killed in prison.
Me too. Me too. I hope he does also. Are a lot of people around trying to monetize the Parkland shootings? Or like, have you been approached by Hollywood types? What's that part of the
Some of us probably have, but we,
yeah.
all the families are close. We would never do that. There are some, of course. There was, some woman that was trying to help him, and she's trying to help her own, foundation. But I hope that's not the case. That would be absolutely disgusting if it does. So most of the families are just trying to do things to keep their loved ones' memories alive. A lot of us have charities, and all of us want to do everything we can to make sure that it never happens again.
Yeah, Max, I really admire you so much on so many levels. It's incredible who you are and what you've done. If you had the ability to speak with your son, with Alex, and explain to him, today what you've been doing, what would you say to him?
I know
Is
that.
that too much of a question?
Yeah, yeah.
uh, you know,
Yeah. I mean, I know that Alex is in heaven, and he's looking down on his family, and he knows that we miss him, and we're trying to make sure that it never happens again. And it's hard every day. I had a beautiful family, and Alex was a wonderful kid, and the world is worse off today because Alex and the 16 others are not here today. They were wonderful, wonderful. There was 14 kids and 3 staff members, and the 3 staff members, there was 1 teacher and 2 staff members that ran into the school, Mark, to try to save lives, and they both were shot and killed because they couldn't do anything. They weren't armed, and I believe that if they had been, others would be alive today because of that. So that's why Florida passed that law that there has to be an armed individual on every campus. And in Florida, parents don't want to send their kids to school without an armed individual.
Are there any other states that have that law in place today?
There are some that have the law, but they haven't really fully implemented. They haven't staffed up. They haven't.
Wow.
Doesn't scale across the state. But again, Florida, there's nothing we take more serious.
It should be the priority. It's the next generation. It's our future. It's our children. I mean, I don't understand. We see so much allocation of budget towards nonsensical issues over and over again at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. I don't know how this issue is not the single most important budgetary issue in, all across this country. It makes no sense to me, honestly.
I agree 100%, Mark. Well, thank you for doing this and shining a light on this issue and giving me some time.
Max, I end each show in the same way. Essentially, what I do is I create a leading question, which integrates the name of the show, Some Future Day. Are you game?
Sure.
All right. In some future day, school safety in America will be
safe and nonviolent and free from violence.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Max?
No, I think you covered a lot.
All right. Well, look, I appreciate your time. I want to give you a hug through the screen. I love you. I love your family.
Thank you.
Just words can't express the emotions that I've gone through in getting to know you for the past couple of days. And I just hope that all of your vision, your mission, your activity, I hope it's all realized. And I just hope that you can forever have your son, Alex, within that beautiful light, that beautiful spirit that you described him in when we started our conversation.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the time, and it's been great getting to know you, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Some Future Day. I know your time is super valuable, so I hope you learned how you can leverage emerging technology to improve your life. And exciting news, my new book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything, is now available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and other major booksellers across the globe. I am so proud to share that because of your support, the book topped the charts. It became #1 bestseller in cryptocurrency, #1 bestseller in artificial intelligence, and #1 bestseller in robotics. So, if you're curious and ready to learn how AI can enhance your career, your community, and your family, get yourself a copy today.